So welcome. I'm excited to see all of you here, social work students. So, if you don't know, haven't seen or interacted with me, I'm Mary Christensen, Director of the MSW program. So this is kind of a special lunch and learn that we try to have every spring for the social work students, specifically focused on, career building, so resume building and career searching or job searching in the social services. And so we have someone from career services here to present on that. Robert Barricelli, I think. So am I saying your name correctly?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I will turn it over to him in a minute, but I just want to note that we have a combination of students here. We've got some on-campus students. I think we've got some online students as well. So that's great. We don't have a huge group, so I think probably the best way to handle if you have questions is to maybe throw them in the chat, and then if there's a natural stopping point, we will give Robert a minute to answer them. But you can also raise your hand if you have a question and want to jump in as well. I am going to ask that everybody keep themselves on mute when you're not speaking, just so that we can eliminate any background noise and distractions. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to our speaker today, and we'll go from there.
Right. So, all right. Hope everybody's doing well today. My name is Robert Barricelli. I'm a career development specialist here at the university, and we're here to help you out in whatever your kind of career readiness needs are, whether it's preparing your professional documents or your job search or networking or whatever it may be. So if you want to make an appointment with us, you can do that through our career services email address or through Handshake. We are physically located right above the bookstore in the Mountain Lair for those of you that are on campus, if you'd like to have an in-person appointment, but we also have Zoom appointments as well. For professional document reviews, you can also just email those in and we will review them, make notes in it, and email those back to you. So whatever works best for whatever your questions are. If you're having an issue developing your professional document and you want to have that conversation, feel free to set an appointment and we'll have that conversation in the development of your materials, okay? So as I mentioned, we help you with your professional documents. We're also the ones that organize all the career fairs on employer events on campus, which we have 4 this semester. We can help you prepare for your interviews by either helping you answer certain questions or give you an interview simulation, whatever may be your need at this point. We can help you with your job search as well as anything else that you're kind of looking for, whether it's negotiation for your salary or evaluating a job offer. We can help you with pretty much anything kind of job related for your postgraduate plans. So today's really about kind of telling your story and making sure you have a resume that's built for what you're applying for, okay? So we have a number of templates on our website, so you don't have to start from scratch. I would encourage you that if you just open up Word and create a template from one of the ones that are built into Word, most of those are not very good. And when I say not very good, I mean like really bad and will probably hinder your job search. So I would encourage you to use the ones that are going to be shared with you after the session today. We've made them personalized for the social work areas, regardless of what path you're going on or what your current degree is as well. So we also have a resume checklist on there, which if you already have a resume, it's a good way to kind of go through section by section. It gives you tips. So if you just want to do a self-evaluation, you can do that as well. But as I mentioned, don't just open up Word or find a random one on the website. Many of the ones that are out there are not very good. So most of the time you're going to be applying for jobs potentially on online application systems. So graphics and colors, tables, text boxes, those are going to interfere with those online systems reading your document. So the ones we're going to share today are very plain looking. They're meant to be plain. and it will help you actually improve your search going forward. Okay. So some basic resume sections, you're going to have your contact information. You're going to have your education up to this point and when you're going to be completing it. The experiences you've had up to this point, whether it's work, volunteer, project experience from your education, leadership experience, whatever it may be, anything you've done outside of the classroom, you can document on your resume. You can have a skill section, and those skills are typically going to be more like, well, I'll say hard-based skills of knowing how to use certain software, certain certifications, those type of things. You don't want to put in, communication or team building there. I want to see that reflected in your experience section. Okay. So, and then you can have additional sections like if you've been involved with research, if you've been involved in clinical activities. So you can highlight other type of, or if you've done shadowing of a professional social worker, and that's something you want to document on there, you can do that as well. Okay. So for the contact information, it's pretty basic. We want to be able to see your name and be able to contact you if we want you to interview you for a job, because the resume just gets you an interview. The interview is the one that gets you a job. Very few places just hire on their resume. So it's more important for me to kind of be able to contact you if I like your resume. So I need your phone number and your email address. I really don't need your physical address because I'm not going to be sending email. If you would like to, you could put your state, your town and location if that's where you're applying for jobs at. So for example, if you're applying for jobs here in Morgantown, you can put, I'm currently in Morgantown, West Virginia as a signal to that. But if you are from Baltimore, Maryland, and you're planning to apply for jobs back there, then put Baltimore, Maryland as your location, right? But the alternative location is, let's say you're wanting to apply for jobs out in Portland, Oregon, and you are not from there and you currently do not live there, just leave the address off. It's really just to kind of show that local flavor of, I know the area, I'm familiar with the community, that type of thing. Okay. So next up, it should be a professional email address. Your mixed email address is fine. If you want to use a personal one, that is fine as well. It should just be something that is either first initial, last name, first name dot last name, something to that effect. You don't want to have an email address that says WVU fan 2024. That's not a professional email address. If you have attained any of your professional licenses, you can put that right under your contact information so that they can see that you've already attained that licensure. If for some reason you would like to put any websites on there, like either a personal website or a portfolio link of any of your work that you're wanting to put up, again, list it as text. Typically when you're in Word, if you hit space after a web URL, it will automatically make a link. Undo that link so that it's just regular text and not a hyperlink. And then if you do have a LinkedIn profile, you can also put that your link on there as well. You don't need all those things. You need at least your name, contact information, and your licensure information if you have it. Okay. You don't have to put websites on there if you do not have them or you're not maintaining them. So this is kind of in general what it looks like. Nice condensed, name, and then ideally everything else on one line underneath it if it'll fit. If not, go to two. We're not trying to stack these on top of each other to make it look longer. Okay. This is one that's kind of an example for social work. You kind of put your licensure afterwards just so that they can easily find it and I know everything that we're looking for. All right. So for the education section, you want to make sure that you spell out your degree name. So if you put Masters of Social Work, you're not going to put MSW there. You're going to write Masters in Social Work. You do not put any of your high school education on there. So if you're an undergraduate student, employers no longer care about your high school degree. They're caring about your degree that's related to their profession. You should put your graduation date as expected whenever you're planning on finishing it. You don't want to put your start date and then say like up to present, because that's not communicating to the employer when you're going to be done. You know, the employer can tell by the end date of, are you currently looking for an internship or a short-term experience for the summertime, or are you finishing up in May and you're looking for full-time employment? So that's how that's communicated with it. And then if your GPA is above a 3.0, regardless of what degree you have, you can include that on there, and that kind of gives some stature for you. I would say most employers' GPAs are starting to become less important. So you can include it if you like, but it's not mandated on there. All right. So this is what it would kind of look like for you. Very condensed section. Your header, university, degree, and then you'll see over on the right-hand side, date and GPA. If you don't want the GPA, just take that part off. But you'll notice that everything, as we start adding on additional sections, all those dates are over on the right-hand side, and they're all aligned to the right margin. And we'll kind of show you that on a few future things. So for your experiences, and you can divide this up into different areas, but in each experience section, so if you have a research experience and a clinical experience section, you want to make sure that within each of those, you're putting the most recent thing at the top of the section, going down to the oldest. And that allows the reader to read the most recent thing first, because that's most likely the most important to them. You can include all things in there, full, part-time, internships, whatever it may be. If you have just an experience section, you can put everything in there, or you can subdivide those things out into different subsections if you want to highlight something more appropriate at the top of your resume. Each experience should have the same type of information. And as you're describing them, you should have bullets that start with action verbs at the bottom. You don't want to say, you know, I assisted families, you know, in food insecurity or something like that. You want to just have the bullet and say assisted families. You're just going to start with the verb. If you want to kind of remember that, think of the bullet as the I, right? So, you know, for example, the first bullet on the screen, it would be I reverse chronological order. Like that's how you can kind of imply that. So you don't want any personal pronouns in your resume anywhere. And then the other thing you want to do is you have to have some type of job description that you're applying for. If that job description says that we're looking for qualification A, B, C, and D, I want to see those qualifications reflected on your resume somewhere if you have them. So you want to mirror that language as much as possible. So if one employer is calling something slightly different, then use their language if that is indeed what you're trained in. Okay, so this is an example of an experience section. And this is a kind of social work intern and kind of mentoring type of position. The X's on the date on the second one were just there as filler, like whatever your dates are. But it's kind of to show that that's more of a past one, and that the first one is kind of more of a present one. So that's one thing I do want to actually correct on the screen that I noticed after it was created, was you'll notice that that first experience ends in May 2022. Since that's a past experience, all the action verbs on those bullets should be past tense. It should be conducted, maintained, ran. These are all past tense. This one is not. This is still present tense, so that would need to be corrected there. Okay. But again, you can say, I conducted weekly individual meetings, I maintained. So if that helps you as you're writing, use that little tip. Okay. All right. So next up, we're going to, you may also have volunteer experiences. So it's going to be very similar to the work experiences that you saw, in that you have kind of like the organization and the date on one line, and then your kind of title underneath, and then the description. So on the previous one, it was institution, date, whatever your title was, description. You're following that same format in the next section as well, even though it's a different type of experience. Okay. So if you're having difficulty either describing your past experiences or knowing what type of things to put on your resume for your future experiences, we're going to show you ONET, which is ONET Online is something that's created by the federal government, and I'll show it to you at the end of the session. And you can find your occupation, and you can look at it and see some descriptions, and I'll say some better descriptions. And I'll just give you a random example. So sometimes people that have been servers in the past at a restaurant will put things on there like, rolled silverware, during downtimes. And that's not a transferable skill, right? Your future employers don't care about your rolling silverware skills, but your communication skills that you had in that position, they would care about. So it's important to kind of, one, think about the job more in the sense of what of those skills are you going to use in your future job, as well as how to maybe better describe your past experiences. Okay, so I'll show you that in just a little bit to kind of see the task and how you can kind of describe that if you need to add something to your description. We also have a section of our website that has action verbs on it. So if you're wanting to highlight those communication skills or helping skills or teamwork skills on our website, we have kind of some action verbs that may be a good source of a brainstorming to be like, oh, I can relate that to one of my past experiences and include that so I can highlight that skill a little bit more to them. Okay, so, and then finally, the last major part of your resume is typically your skills and experiences. And as I mentioned, it's more what software packages you know. Do you know any type of non-English languages? And that would include, American Sign Language or anything else. And what level of expertise do you have in that area? So are you fluent? Are you able to just do conversational? Or you're intermediate? The one thing you want to make sure is that you're not overstating your language knowledge. We've had a student 10 years ago who took, 2 introductory Chinese classes, and she put Chinese on her skill section. And when she got to the interview, the first question was in Chinese, right? And that's not the level of Chinese that she knew. So make sure that you're not overstating your experience there, okay? And then anything else that you see on the job description that is important that you want to highlight that can't be described in your experiences. So even if they put something as simple as can drive a car, like if you have to drive a car for the position that you're doing, you can say West Virginia driver's license with clean driving record, something to that effect. If you have basic life support and CPR training and it's still up to date and active, you can put that in your skills section as well. So don't be afraid to put things on there if it's speaking to the job description. So here's an example of that. For the professional development, that might be some trainings, workshops, or conferences that you've attended. And then you can see with the skills section, there's certain approaches and modalities that they're highlighting. And then you can kind of see with the language section stating kind of level of fluency. You do not need to say that you're fluent in English. That's kind of understood. So just talk about non-English languages in that section, okay? And then you may have some additional sections that you put on there, such as honors and awards that you've gotten, leadership experience that you've been involved with, like student organizations here on campus or in the state or national level, community service that you've done. That's, again, building on skills or working with populations that you're hoping to work with in the future. So for example, if you are really wanting to work with veterans in the future and you've been volunteering with the veterans organization here at WVU or in Morgantown, then include that on there, okay? I've already mentioned certifications. You can break that out as a separate section if you would like to. If you're wanting to highlight some of the projects you've done from your coursework, because you're like, this really does speak directly to this job, then you can have a projects experience section. If you've been involved with research, again, you're going to format that exactly the same, except the employer is going to be whoever your lab was. So if it's Department of Social Work, Western University, your title is going to be undergraduate researcher or graduate research assistant, whatever it may be. And then you're going to describe it. It's going to be the same format. And then if you have been involved with any presentations related to your research or publications, you may have that as a separate section as well. And I'll show you that on a CV here in a second. So any questions right now about resumes? All right, while we're here, I'm just going to pop up some of the examples that are going to be shared with you after today. So you kind of saw screenshots of them, but this is just a Word document that has it. You'll get this example, and then you can personalize it to yourself. You'll notice that this is a 2-page resume. That's perfectly fine within your field. You do not have to stay to a 1-page format. They're wanting to get a full experience of everything you've done. So for your field, you're allowed to go beyond that 1-page requirement. Okay. If you have been involved with research, we have a MSW CV template, and a CV is just a longer form version of a resume, and it has same professional experiences. It may have teaching experience if you've been a TA or graduate TA. You're going to have a research section, and then if you've had other types of publications or manuscripts, you'll notice that as I scroll through this, all the dates are on the right-hand side. Everything looks the same throughout the document. You want that to be very simple and visual to everybody, okay? So one question that came in was, do social workers include CEUs on their resume? So I think for the other version, and I'll kind of scroll down here. So for the CV version, there's one called professional development, and that's where I would include that in there and format it so that the reader understands what you do. So you might call it professional development and then just say, afterwards, I attended this. So let's say this is a training that WVU provides. You might want to put a comma and then, 3 hours of CEU or something like that. If you are trying to document that CEU part of it, just to kind of make it clear to the reader, okay? On the CV, you'll also notice that there's a reference section. You typically don't put that on your resume, but you can on your CV. Most of the time, if you're applying through online systems, they're going to collect this at some point to do a background check on you. So whether it's on your document or not, if they need it, they're going to ask for it, okay? So let me just switch back to that bachelor's.
Robert, there's actually one more question in the chat. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I just want to show you the other kind
Okay.
of professional development on the MSW resume one. You can see it's formatted slightly different than it was on the CV. Make it whatever makes sense for you, okay? Like, for example, you may not need to put, I would maybe split this out. If you are going to have a lot of CEUs, I would probably bring this organization out and call it professional organizations that you're part of, and then just make this trainings and conferences and things that you've been to as CEU development. So again, it's your document. It's you divided up how you want. You can group things together. If you only have one of each thing, you can kind of put them all under professional development. If you have a lot, split those out into different sections, okay? So they have lots. So one question was, there's lots of experience, volunteer experience from 2013 to 2017. And they began working and have no volunteer experience since then. Should they include the past experience? I would say if they've been working since 2017 and it's been relevant to their field, I would only put the volunteer experience prior to that if it really speaks to that position. So again, kind of going back to that veterans example, if the volunteer work from 2017 was with veterans and the job you're applying for is with veterans, then show like, I've been working with veterans for, over 6 years, then, and I'm used to that population. That's fine. If it's something that's totally different, like I volunteered as I read at a nursery school, when I was an undergraduate, and you're applying for that veterans position, are those connected? I would say that that one's probably a bit of a reach for me. So I don't know if I would include it in that context. Okay. All right. So the next question was, are there any tips on what we should include in the experience summary? I don't want to leave out important information, but I don't want to include too much. So this is going to be a frustrating answer, but it depends. So there is not, I think the examples we have here have 5 bullets for each. There's not a magic number of how many bullets you should have, or is there a limit to that? You're mainly trying to explain that experience to the reader so that they know you're prepared from that experience for the job that you're applying for. So if this experience needs to be 10 bullets long to explain all those things in order to talk to the job that you're applying for, that's okay. If this job really only has 2 that speaks to the job, then having 2 is perfectly fine as well. Okay. So there is no magic number. It's really what you're trying to do is answer the employer that's reading this. What qualities do you have that have prepared you to come into this position? How much more am I going to have to train you if there's that necessity? Are you familiar with our clientele? That type of aspect of it. So it's more a relevancy thing than a length thing. And then another question was, if you were in leadership or did other things in high school that tie into everything else, is it inappropriate to use those because it was high school? So if you were like the senior class president, I don't care anymore. If you were volunteering in high school and that's part of your volunteer experience, again, you were working with veterans, just to keep that example going on. If you were volunteering in high school with veterans there, and that's who you're applying for in the future, then I would put that in the volunteer section. If you had a job while you were in high school and that's the only job you've ever had because you've been in school the whole time and you haven't had any other jobs, it's okay to highlight that as well, just to kind of say, I have worked as in a professional environment, and I know that I have to show up on time and interact and have communication skills with clients or customers. So it's perfectly fine to include things that happened while you were in high school, but I really don't care about the things that you did within the walls of the high school, might be the way to put it. Okay. So if you were class president or captain of your volleyball team, that is not as relevant for what you're applying for. Even if you're a bachelor's student, if you're graduating, are you the same person you were 4 years ago when you were graduating high school? I would probably say you're not. So that's not really a good representation of who you are as you're entering the job force now. Okay. But again, if there are things on there, like let's say you attended a really unique conference while you're in high school that is competitive to get into or prestigious in some way, then that might be something that you would include, if that makes sense. Okay. So I'll kind of pause there. Yeah. All right. So, and the video will also be available if you do need to jump off early. Are there any other resume questions before we move on to the job search? All right, so I'll kind of keep an eye on it. So we now kind of want to talk about the overall job search process and how to approach it. And I know many of you may be in different stages of where you are in your college career and when you're planning on going into the workforce. So it kind of, again, it kind of depends on where you're at and what you're looking for right now. In general, we typically say that a good job search takes about 6 months. So if you're graduating, um, for example, in December as an undergraduate student, then you would probably want to start job searching probably after the semester in the summer and throughout the fall so that you have something lined up for you in January. Okay. So one of the things you want to do before you start your job search is kind of do a self-reflective exercise. Really think about what it is you're looking for. You don't want to just sit down on a computer and just type in titles of jobs that you think you want to apply for and, get jumped all over the place. You want to really think about, is there a certain geographical area you're wanting to live in? If there isn't, that's okay. That's actually great. You may have a lot more opportunities that way. But if there is a geographical area, what are those areas? Are there certain types of populations that you want to work with, as I've described before? How will you, if there is, that'll help narrow your research. When is it that you're planning on graduating? Are you looking for internships versus for summer, involvement versus full-time employment, and what that might look like? Because even if you're not ready to start applying for a job today, you might start doing things to build your network to start applying for a job 3 or 6 months from now. Okay. So it's a good idea to know what you're looking for, because also as you're writing your cover letters or resumes or reaching out to potential employers and introducing yourself to people, knowing that ahead of time will be useful in that introduction. Okay. So one thing we encourage students to do is keep a actual spreadsheet of what you're applying for. So start off by listing, all right, where do I want them to be? So in the address column, you can be like, I'm just looking for jobs in Morgantown, or I'm looking for jobs in Morgantown, Fairmont, Clarksburg, or Pittsburgh, I-79, like that type of thing. So you can kind of put that information in there as part of your job search. Then you can say, are there certain organizations that you're already going to target? Like if there's people that you've worked with in the past or want to work with, like if there's a high priority organization that you're like, that's my dream place to work, then start writing those down. And then if you don't have any of them, we'll continue to keep doing that search. Okay. So kind of fill out this as much as you can before you even get started. And then after that, as you search for more jobs, you can add that to this list as you're building onto it. All right. Because the one thing especially if you're using multiple search sites like Handshake, LinkedIn, Indeed, elsewhere, and you're using multiple at the same time, you might not realize that you've seen the same job on all 3 of those and applied for the job on all 3 of those. And then that looks a little weird from the employer standpoint. So you want to make sure like, oh, I've seen that job on Handshake. I've already applied for it, even if you come across it on LinkedIn or somewhere else. Okay. So the next step of the job search process is before you sit down on the computer and start doing a lot of that search, you want to make a list of the people that you know in your profession related to your career path that you're looking for. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to kind of start off with yourself, and then you're going to go out to the next circle of this kind of target graphic. And you're going to say, who are the people I already know who are kind of related to this field? So your professors, your classmates, people in your professional organizations that you've been networking with. You may have been shadowing at different places or interacting with professionals already out in the field. Maybe you knew people that were in the class ahead of you and they're already working out in the field. Who are the people you already know? Start there, okay? And talk, and then maybe family members. Maybe you have a neighbor or an aunt who is in your field of expertise or works at the employer that you want to work at, and start with the people you know first, okay? And then the next thing is you're going to kind of go out to the next ring there. And so the ones that have all the twos, you don't know those people, but the people you know those people. So it may be, one of your classmates' fathers works in that organization, or your neighbor has a sister that works in that organization, that type of thing. Or if you're in the master's program and you did your undergraduate degree somewhere else, you may know someone who is in a different geographical area that one of your classmates wants to go to. So you can help facilitate that connection as well. All right. So that's really what you're trying to think about is who do you know? Who do your friends know? And make sure that everybody that you know knows you're in the job search process. Say, I'm looking for this type of job and this is what I'm looking for, because you never know, someone might say, oh, my next door neighbor actually works for that organization. So when you're at family events, make sure everybody's aware that you're in the job search and what you're looking for, okay? And then the next kind of outer ring out is you'll kind of see that there's no connections with those. So those may be specific employers that you're wanting to target or specific people that you're wanting to interact with. And you're trying to figure out, how do I get connected with that? So again, you may use that network to kind of build out to them and see if there are connections and have those people do introductions to you. If there are not, then you just have to do a cold introduction, okay? But ideally, you would want to kind of try to use some type of connection to start that conversation. So if you're part of a professional organization and you know the person that you want to interact with is going to be at a conference that you're going to attend in April, then reach out to them in advance and say, like, I'm really interested in working with you in the future. I'm going to be at this conference that I see that you're presenting at. Can we meet up for lunch one day just to talk about possible opportunities? You don't know that person, but you've made a connection through your professional organization to try to get that type of time with them. Okay. All right. So next up. So if you are looking for geographically constrained places, so let's say you're wanting to stay in Morgantown, or you're wanting to target Pittsburgh or Washington, D.C., and you're kind of zoned in on that, then I would actually say one thing you may want to do to add to your job search is to not just look at job postings, but actually switch to like Google Maps. And if you're really wanting to look at organizations here in Morgantown, so let's say you're wanting to go into like a counseling type of position where you're going to be interacting with clients on a one-on-one or small group basis, you may want to just type into Google Maps and say, mental health facilities. And then you'll see all of them in Morgantown, both private practices, which may not post on Handshake and Indeed very often. So that will help you kind of identify who all those employers are in whatever geographical area you're targeting, whether they have a job posting out there or not. And then you can start to do that outreach to them as something that I'm interested in being involved with. That may also include charities, other nonprofits, that might be a good connection to kind of go for. Many of those smaller organizations, private practices, and I'll say smaller nonprofits probably don't have an HR person and may not be posting their positions that get floated out to Handshake, Indeed, LinkedIn type of thing, right? They might just post it on their website, and that's all. That's the only place you're going to find it. So using that kind of Google Maps approach will get you to their website that allows you to kind of do that individual search there. Okay. If you see a job posting out on LinkedIn or Handshake or Indeed, and they have a website as well, go to their website, do the application there rather than doing the application on LinkedIn or Handshake. Because while we do monitor Handshake very diligently, there may be a scammer out there that's pretending to be someone else And they might say like, yes, please send us your resume. Yes, we want to hire you. Can you send us this information? And they may give you like a fake interview and everything. And they might say like, okay, here's your W-2. Please fill this out with your social security number, email address, address, all those type of things. And now they've stolen your identity. So make sure you're applying ideally through the employer's website if that's available. Again, there may be smaller employers that do everything through Indeed or through Handshake. But in general, in my experience, especially, for example, the ones here in Morgantown, they may be doing just email me your resume, and that's how I'm going to do it. So that's how you want to approach that. All right. And I've mentioned Handshake. Hopefully everybody's aware of it. I know we send a lot of emails out about it, but we have your WVU login credentials logs in there. You can look for employers. You can look for jobs. You can look at upcoming career fairs and see what employers are coming to it ahead of time so that you can be prepared going into that career fair. And as I mentioned for ONET, if you're looking, ONET's also a good resource to identify possible other titles of types of jobs that you might be, looking for. So, and I'll actually show that to you in just a second. And then once you have your resume created, which we talked about earlier, you also want to make sure that once your resume is up to date, update your LinkedIn profile as well to make sure that you have it's up to date. Some recruiters for larger organizations do searches on there and discover people that way. But you also want to make sure that that's up to date so that if you do reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, they can see what your current credentials are. And then, as I mentioned before, kind of with that networking example, if there is a small practice person or a researcher that you're wanting to get involved with, doing that, you don't want to reach out to that person and say, hey, I see you're at a conference. I was wondering if I could have a job interview when we're at the conference. Like they're going to be a little bit turned off by that. But if you say to them, I'm really interested in the research you're doing, can we meet for lunch and talk about that a little bit more in depth? Or if you're talking to a practitioner that might be an alumni from here that's working with a certain population that you've not been exposed to, you might reach out to them and say, hey, can we have a half-hour meeting? Because I'd really like to ask you some questions to learn more about your practice, your clientele, things that are specific to that I might not have gotten from my other experiences right now, because I'm trying to determine what type of jobs I'm applying for in the future. So those informational interviews can help you determine and collect information and network with people to really know what you're wanting to do in the future. And that person also could turn into a mentor. And then if they do have positions available, they might say, hey, I've been really impressed with our time here. Why don't you send me your resume? Or they might say, I don't have any positions available, but I know someone who does. So send me your resume and I'll forward that along. So it's always a good opportunity to start again, reaching out and talking to as many people as possible. And as I mentioned, get involved with WVU alumni. And we have, whether that's through LinkedIn, through Handshake, through your program, through WVU Connect, you can log into those programs, search for WVU alumni in certain employers or certain geographical areas, and reach out to them and saying, hey, I'm really interested in coming to Houston, Texas. I see you've lived there for 3 years and that you're an employer that I'm targeting. I was wondering if I could set up a time to talk with you for a little bit to see if, to get more information about Houston or that employer, right? So again, you're kind of asking for their time, and people like to talk about themselves. So that's more likely than them to say yes. If you reach out to them and say, I'm really targeting Houston as a job and your employer, can you give me a job? They're, again, going to turn off a little bit to that, okay? So one of the career fairs that we have coming up that you may want to attend to in person is on Thursday, February 15th, about 3 weeks from now. and it'll be in the Mount Lair ballrooms. You can see all the different types of companies that are going to be there. That includes social services, nonprofits, as well as other public health institutions. There's a couple school districts. And then we also have some resume review sessions that'll be walk-in available to you on career services. And if you go to that events website, you can get links to both of those. Like I said, we will probably close the registration for the behavioral and social science the week prior, so February 7th, 8th, somewhere in there. So if you wait until then, there are still employers that are still registering for that fair. Just much like students, sometimes employers wait till the last minute to register as well. So I'm going to pause there. Any questions about the job search at this point, or resumes that you might have thought about? All right, so while you're thinking about questions or typing them in the chat room, I just wanted to briefly show you ONET. So first, I'm going to just, so ONET is put together by federal agencies that collect all this information. So it's a very robust and informative website. So I'm just going to start basic, right? So social worker. So I'm going to do social and community service manager. That's probably not. Yeah, that actually kind of works. So as you're doing your search out there, you might just put in there, family social worker or something to that effect. But you'll notice that here it also gives you some additional possible titles that could be related to this field. So that will help you with your job search, because not everything here has social in it, right? So, clinical service director, depends on the facility that you're looking on. You might get different types of jobs that might not be what you're looking for that one, but at least this might be a good spark to how should I search for titles on some of those job boards. And then actually I want to switch to something else. Let's go with so let's say you've had a food service position in the past and you don't know how to describe that on your resume. As was noted in the slides, you can come down to the task area and get an idea. Like here it's talking about cleaning and sterilizing. If that's important to your job field, then include that. This one's talking about the serving part of it. That's not as important, right? So recording, some more communication type of things. So this may be a good possible example to pull out some additional activities. And there's lots of different sub areas. And actually, I want to go back to the social work. So you can do the same thing here as well. Of these may be the types of skills that they're looking for, or that you could highlight that would be relevant to the jobs that you're applying for. There's some technical skills, there's work activities. Then the main thing I want to show you, and then here's some other skills that you can look at. But the main thing I want to go down to is the wages part. So if you're trying to figure out how much you might be worth in different states, and every state may be different, every institution and employer may be different, but this might be a good starting point to have an idea of what your salary expectations could be in that area. So I'm going to search West Virginia. So a few things. It gives you the blue kind of, range for this type of position across the US. The low end and the high end, these are the 25% markers, if I remember, or the 10%. So, and then it shows you kind of the West Virginia in general. Most West Virginia ones are shifted so a little bit lower. The main reason is the US part includes all geographical areas, even high income areas like Washington, DC, New York City, LA, those type of things. So those are going to artificially pull those up across the nationwide aspect of it. You're also going to have lots of different years of experiences built in here and education levels as well. So if we scroll down and we're looking at West Virginia, if there's a lot of them in that state, it will actually break it out into sub regions within the state. So you can kind of get an idea of, if you look at the 50% area, how that might change from, location to location. Okay. So we would be surprising it doesn't have a Morgantown one here. But you'll see down in Charleston, they're getting paid a little bit more. Over in Washington, DC, there's a big jump up, right? With little to no experience coming out with just your degree, you're probably going to be shooting more towards the between the 25 and the 50 is kind of your starting salary range normally. Okay. You can also, if you want help with that, of what you're worth, depending on the type of job, your location, you can come in and we'll talk about your individual type of experience. And there are also other websites that we can help you kind of search that out as well. Okay. And then the other thing I'm going to show you is just if you click on the events on our career services site, it will take you to the career fairs. It'll also take you to the resume review workshops so that you can kind of go in and research what employers are here. This is going to be the one that's going to have the most relevance to you, but I would encourage you to look at the other ones because you never know. There may be a hospital system that is only coming to this career fair, for example. And even though they might be coming for a different type of major or field, they're still that organization. So it's always good to go talk to someone who's actually working there. What's the application process? What's the timeline? So for example, my experience recently with students is people that are applying for jobs at WVU medicine may not hear back for anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, even if they're a top candidate, just because of the amount of jobs that they're hiring for at the hospital. So if you don't hear, that doesn't mean that you're not a contender. Just it's good to have that knowledge ahead of time of, if I'm applying for this job, I may not hear about it for a while. Or if you talk to a small practitioner, they're probably going to get back to you pretty quickly. So just having some of that knowledge and talking to people in advance, those are the type of questions you want to ask them. All right. So I'm going to pause there. Are there any other questions that anybody has? All right, so the last thing I'm going to show you is if you go to students and build a resume, if you just want to email your document in for us, like you don't have questions, you just want feedback, you can email it into our career services website. If you do want to make an appointment, you can do that through Handshake. You can do that either through clicking on Handshake there, or if you scroll down to the bottom of this website, it will say find jobs, log into Handshake here, or how to meet with a career development specialist. Whatever works best for you. Okay. And then here was the resume checklist that I talked about, kind of the do's and don'ts for each section. The action verb section was kind of the, how to brainstorm on some of those descriptions. And then if you do need a cover letter, a thank you, or how to decline a job, we have little templates for each one of those as well. Okay. And I just realized I probably, now the ONET link is in the slideshow, so you'll get that in the PowerPoint afterwards. Okay. Are there any other questions?
So, we're waiting to see if anybody has questions. I just want to thank you for this really helpful presentation for our students, and just a reminder that we will Sarah, my GA, will send out a PDF version of the PowerPoint slides to the folks who were on the call today. So you will get that.
All right. I don't see any other questions. Feel free to visit us in Career Services. We're here to help you, and we'll meet you wherever you are needed, whether you're just starting off with your resume or interviewing, or whether you've done it for a little bit and you just need to have it polished. We're willing to help you wherever you may be in your job search process.
Thank you. So thank you very much for presenting and taking the time. And, you know, I'm excited to see so many students on the call, and we will be, we have another Lunch and Learn, I believe, next Wednesday. So feel free to join us for that. And I hope you all have a good rest of your afternoon.
All right. Great questions, everybody. See you later.